Welcome to this cozy space for thought. Today, we're digging into an idea that, well, it feels almost obvious on the surface. But really unlocking it can totally change how you approach your work, maybe even your life.
Yeah, and the core question we're wrestling with is, what is deep work, really? And why is it so surprisingly difficult to actually do consistently, even though the concept itself sounds pretty straightforward?
Right. Think about, your own typical workday. Do you ever feel like you're just bouncing between emails and meetings, maybe juggling a few different things at once? And at the end of the day, you kind of struggle to pinpoint where the real progress happened
Yeah.
on the stuff that actually matters.
Mm-hmm.
If that sounds familiar at all, then yeah, this conversation is definitely for you. Okay, so let's start there. When we say deep work, what are we actually talking about? What does it look like?
Well, put simply, deep work is really about focused concentration. It's tackling a task that's cognitively demanding and doing it completely free from distractions. It's that state where you're just fully immersed, Your attention is locked onto the problem.
Okay, focused, demanding, no distractions. And that's distinct from, I think we were calling it shallow work. What falls into that bucket?
Exactly, yeah. Shallow work covers those necessary but usually less intellectually intense tasks. Things like, firing off routine emails, sitting in on maybe less critical meetings, making standard calls, just general admin stuff. They often involve coordination, communication, but they just don't demand that same level of, deep mental horsepower.
There's this really vivid analogy we came across, something about building for the deep sea. Can you maybe expand on that? I think it really highlights the contrast.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Imagine the kind of intense focus, the meticulous planning you'd need to design, say, a submersible, something built to withstand the crushing pressure at the very bottom of the ocean. Every single calculation, every material choice, it all demands just deep concentration and serious problem solving.
Yeah, intense.
Now, contrast that with a day that's mostly spent, managing your inbox and popping into quick check-in meetings. Both are work, definitely. But the cognitive load, worlds apart. One is really constructing something significant under immense pressure. The other is more navigating the surface currents.
That makes it super clear. Okay, so the definition itself, pretty straightforward. But here's the puzzle, right? If it's that simple to grasp, why do so many of us, myself included, find it so hard to actually do it regularly? What's the disconnect?
That is the fascinating part, isn't it? It's not like focus is a new invention. And maybe, further back, achieving that level of concentration felt easier, more natural. But the way modern work has evolved, with the constant connectivity, the sheer flood of digital pings and notifications, it's fundamentally kind of rewired our attention spans, I think. It's made that sustained focus a real uphill battle.
Yeah.
So what might have once been more accessible now feels like you have to actively fight for it.
Okay, and this is where I think it gets really, really important. What actually happens when we lose that ability? Or if we just can't tap into that deeper level of work often enough? What are the consequences?
Well, one really big one is our ability to truly learn diminishes. Think about it mastering complex new skills or really getting a deep grasp of a new subject. That requires sustained attention. It just does. It's like trying to learn, say, musical instrument while you're also scrolling through your phone every 2 minutes. You might pick up a few chords maybe, but actual fluency, deeper understanding, it's just not going to happen.
All right, you just scratch the surface.
Exactly. Without that deep cognitive engagement, we tend to stay superficial. And that makes it harder to adapt, especially as the professional world gets more complex.
That absolutely rings true. You can't really absorb something complex when your brain's jumping all over the place. What else? What's another major impact?
Our creativity takes a hit too. Those breakthrough ideas, the really innovative solutions, they often bubble up during periods of intense, uninterrupted thought. That's when connections happen.
Yeah.
But if we're constantly being interrupted, pulled away by notifications or emails, our minds just don't get the space they need to explore those connections, to dig into the nuances and let those kind of unexpected insights emerge. It's like trying to have a really deep conversation in the middle of a loud party.
The signal gets lost in the noise.
Precisely. Even if you're physically sitting there staring at the problem, if your mind is mentally distracted, you're not genuinely engaging with it on that deep level.
Wow, so it's not just learning less effectively, but our ability to generate new ideas is actually hampered too. That's huge. And I remember reading something about how the actual ability to focus deeply can kind of atrophy, weaken if we don't use it.
That's exactly right. Think of your ability to concentrate like a cognitive muscle. It really is use it or lose it.
Yeah.
The more we let ourselves get pulled around by every little distraction, the harder it becomes to actually resist them and sustain focus when we really need to. It becomes a sort of negative cycle.
It also feels like sometimes our modern work environments are actively designed against deep work, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Open plan offices, the constant Slack messages, the expectation that you'll reply instantly. It makes shallow work feel like the default, the path of least resistance.
You've absolutely hit on a key tension there. If you look at how a lot of workplaces are structured, the emphasis often seems to be on, well, constant communication, constant availability, constant responsiveness.
Right, visibility.
Yeah. And well, look, collaboration and sharing information are obviously vital, especially for complex problems. There's often this imbalance. These more superficial interactions can easily end up overshadowing the dedicated time needed for that focused individual thinking that ultimately drives the big breakthroughs or significant progress.
So we end up prioritizing looking busy over actually being productive on the deep stuff.
Exactly. There's a real risk of that.
Okay, so if we feel like maybe we've lost some of that deep focus muscle, is it possible to rebuild it? Is that analogy real? Can we train ourselves?
Oh, definitely. The muscle analogy is quite fitting, I think. Developing your capacity for deep work, it really involves first understanding why it's valuable, then learning the principles of focused attention. And then this is the key part, consistent practice. It's not about finding some magic bullet or a quick productivity hack. It's really about intentionally training your mind day after day to resist those pulls towards distraction and to sustain concentration for longer stretches.
But it feels like it's not just about individual willpower, is it? You mentioned the environment. There are these bigger forces pushing against us.
Absolutely. That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
It's not just in our heads. Our work cultures, the social norms around, always being on and connected, even the way a lot of our entertainment is designed now, short bursts, constant stimulation, all these things create an environment that often, frankly, discourages sustained focus.
Yeah.
So committing to deep work usually means you have to consciously, actively push back against these really pervasive external forces. It's an ongoing effort.
It really sounds like a continuous journey, not a destination you just arrive at. And honestly, it's kind of comforting to hear that it's not just, a personal failing if you struggle with this.
Yeah.
It's a wider challenge baked into how we live and work now.
It really is. And it's a process, right? Learning, adapting, figuring out the strategies that work for you personally to carve out that vital space for focus amidst all the noise.
For anyone listening right now who's thinking, okay, I want to work on this, I want to strengthen that deep work muscle, are there any particular resources you found helpful along the way?
Yeah, there are some really excellent books out there that dive much deeper into this. Titles like Deep Work Itself, also Focus, and Indistractable. They offer great frameworks, practical advice, actual strategies you can try.
Great. Good starting points.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe as you listening reflect on this conversation, just take a moment to consider that balance in your own life, the balance between that focused, deep work and the more surface-level, shallow tasks. How does it look for you professionally and personally?
And maybe think about just one specific area. Where could intentionally cultivating a bit more deep focus lead to, more meaningful learning for you? Or perhaps spark some more creative thinking?
Yeah, because this isn't about trying to eliminate all communication or collaboration. That's impossible and often necessary.
Right.
But it is about consciously, strategically creating that dedicated space for the kind of undistracted, intensive thinking that really lets you move the needle on your most important goals. Just think, what might actually become possible if you could consistently tap into that deeper capacity?